Hello fans of RPGs, my name is Greg Delmage. I'm one of the video editors and various contributors over at RPGFan, and I am here with Brian Mackenzie, who wrote our review for the most recent Pokémon re-releases. And today we are going to get into chatting with Brian about a few things you should probably know before you play Pokémon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. So Brian, what are things that people should probably know before walking into these remakes?
Yeah, so I think the big one with any remake is talking about the differences in gameplay between the original and the new one. I think that's something that people want to know.
Of course.
And it is fairly faithful to the original, but with a lot of kind of the modern quality of life adjustments they've made in more recent Pokemon games. So one of the first ones that I appreciated was HMs are now TMs, and like when you need to surf or rock smash on the map, you actually just pull up a little menu, and you can get a guest Pokemon to do it instead of having to have one of your Pokemon know the HM, and then you have to have a Zigzagoon in your team that knows 4 HMs or whatever. You don't have to do that in this one.
You don't just have your little utility Pokemon just sitting there in the wings waiting and not being used in any battles whatsoever.
Yeah, so that was definitely one I was happy to see. You still have all of the moves are now TMs, so you can still teach your Pokemon Surf or Rock Smash if you want to, but you don't have to.
Right. Now, then, are they... are any of the TMs one-shots like they were in Sword and Shield, where you had the big powerful ones that were one-shots, but all the other TMs were reusable?
So this was actually something that surprised me. They're actually back to all being one-shots. So every TM, now breaks after you use it once, but some of the NPCs that would give you one TM in the original version will now give you 3 or 4. So you get a little bit of a break where, you get to use it a few times until you're all out of them. And they did add a new way to get some TMs that I'm going to talk about a little later. So, a bit of a regression there, but not all the way back to the original. It's still a little more forgiving.
Yeah. But no more ride Pokemon like they did in Alpha Ruby and Omega Sapphire.
Yeah, no more ride Pokemon. It's just when you need to use an HM, you call up, usually it's a Bidoof that comes and does it for you.
Now, is that so? Saying that it's usually a Bidoof, does that mean you are the one who taught Bidoof all the HMs, or it's just you trigger the HM and it's just more or less
you trigger it and it's like a wild Bidoof.
Games.
Yeah, you press a button and it's like a wild Bidoof came and helped you out. I say it's usually a Bidoof because it has to be it'll be a Pokemon that could have learned the move. So if you use Fly, it'll be some flying Pokemon instead of a Bidoof. But
no, I demand a Bidoof with a jetpack.
I mean, that'd be pretty cool. I could go for that.
So what else are big differences, I guess, between... That's probably, again, like you said, what most fans want to know in this part.
Yeah, so another kind of thing they do in modern Pokemon games that wasn't in the original is kind of the change to the friendship and affinity system, where now it affects battle more directly. In Diamond and Pearl, there were a couple select moves where that mattered, like Return, that cared about how much your Pokemon liked you. In this game, it's a bit more of a fleshed out mechanic. If your Pokemon likes you, they will do all sorts of little things to make battle easier. They'll occasionally get a critical hit when they wouldn't have. They'll dodge an attack. They'll survive something that would have knocked them out, or they'll recover from a status effect. And you won't notice as much.
Just been in the more modern ones.
Yeah, and you won't notice it much at the beginning of the game because obviously you won't have built up the friendship points with your Pokemon. But by the mid and late game, that'll be triggering pretty often. Because you raise it just by traveling and battling with your Pokemon. There's no Pokemon or me or camping from Sword and Shield. Just the only way it goes up is by using the Pokemon.
Oh, they took away all the mini game aspect of it.
So there are still some mini games. There's still Poffins that were in the original, but nothing like the camp or the petting mini games.
That's fair, but I mean those are kind of. It all depends, I guess, on what you want. I mean, I guess you'd arguably the target audience of the younger generations. they would want that interactivity to interact with their Pokemon and have fun with them. Like my daughter loves having access to the camp and Pokemon and me and stuff like that, so that way she can build those friendships up because she gets attached to her Pokemon in battle when and finds it very heartwarming when they like you get that little text that says like, oh, they held on just for you and didn't get knocked out on that 1 HP. Like she takes that to heart, possibly as much as or more than most kids. Who knows? But I can see it from like our point of view as more adult players who just don't have the luxury of time these days.
Yeah,
it's nice to have it be more of a passive growth.
Yeah, I do. I think it's a great feature for like the younger audiences that probably appreciate it a little more than I do. I will say one thing.
It could be nice to toggle it, but
yeah, that I do wish it were a toggle, just because on the subject of time saving. It gets to a point where basically every turn at the beginning of it, your Pokemon will do like a little bouncy animation and it'll be like, your Pokemon likes you. And I'm like, well, that's great, but I don't need to see it every time.
That's fair.
But yeah, so there were some other smaller adjustments they made. Like now you can switch your Pokemon party from the field instead of just doing it in Pokemon centers. You don't need to go to a PC. You can just at any time swap from your party to a box. With some exceptions.
That's a great addition in Sword and Shield. So
yeah, like you can't do it in the middle of a gym, but for the most part, you can go wherever you want.
It would have been sweet if they did like Final Fantasy X style, where you could swap them in and out in the middle of battle.
And that'd be pretty cool. That was fun in that game.
Be a very different energy. That's for sure.
But yeah, they also added an autosave feature, so you can't forget to save and lose hours of progress anymore, which is nice.
Wonderful.
The only hazard with that is there is one point in the 7th gym where if you're unsure about the puzzle there, you might want to turn autosave off. It is a feature in the options, because you can soft lock there if you have autosave on.
Whoa.
Yeah, there's like one small part of the puzzle where if you mess it up, you can get stuck, and if you have autosave on, it might save while you're stuck, which would not be ideal.
Which I guess is held over from the original, but I guess so. But it's made. I guess that wouldn't have been a problem in the original.
Well,
I mean, you could probably get.
You would have lost some
original,
progress.
Suppose,
yeah, because in the original, you just you'd turn it off, you'd load your last save. But in this one, if the autosave,
unless you saved after the point.
But in this one, it can autosave over it for you, which would not be great. So
interesting they didn't just get rid of that as a potential.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of thing that I don't think is going to happen often. It's going to be a pretty rare occurrence, so it's possible they just didn't even think about it. But
still, Brian's
as a
tip,
precaution,
watch out for that.
Yeah. And then the other major change they made, I think, is going to be the most controversial kind of the modernizations they made, which is that the experience share is similar to how it was in Sword and Shield, where it's on automatically, and it applies to all of your Pokemon that are in your party, whether or not they participate in a fight. So, if you have one Pokemon and it takes out another Pokemon, everybody gets experience.
Which that seems like a good thing to me. Like, what's so divisive about it?
So I think the issue that some people have with it is just that it doesn't always feel like the game is quite balanced around the fact that everyone's getting experience now. For me, by the time I'd hit the 5th gym, and it's not like I was doing a lot of grinding, all of my Pokemon were 10 levels higher than like everything in the gym. Just because there's so much
just crushing stuff unintentionally,
which can make the gameplay a little more dull than it otherwise would be, because it gets to a point where it's like you don't even really have to think about it. You can just use your most powerful move, and
as much as it's fun to just kind of like every once in a while just waylaced at something and feel the satisfaction of your hard work from the grind, there is a certain element of all the Pokemon games, the strategy of the combat system, that is really engaging.
Yeah, and it does get better by the end of the game. When I was at, the last gym in the Elite Four, then I was a lot closer in level, and that's actually when I think the gameplay became a lot more engaging in those, last few hours. So I don't think the feature is bad. I think it's probably better. It largely brings the game in line with every other party-based RPG where kind of the whole party gets experience.
Fair.
I just think maybe they could do a little better with the pacing and difficulty balancing moving forward.
Gotcha. And do you feel endemic of the fact that they ported the game essentially? Or I guess it's not a direct port. Like, this is a remake from the ground up, or is it just new paint over old hardware?
So it is mostly kind of a one-to-one recreation. They did rebalance the levels a little bit. If they didn't, then I would have been over-leveled the whole time. But
Gotcha.
But so maybe I
could have used more though.
Yeah, maybe if they took that a little bit further, I think it would have been perfect.
Gotcha. So, is there anything else that people should know with the new changes that are important, or can we get into your next pro tip?
Yeah, I think we can get into the next one, which is talking less about changes to the core gameplay and more about changes to content. Kind of what big new things are there that aren't related to the combat experience in Pokemon catching. And there are a few of those. There's actually not many.
Okay.
Like I said, it's a very faithful remake. All of the towns, routes, the story, that's all basically the same. But with this nice, fresh new coat of paint. But there are a couple new features.
A little stumpier.
Yeah. But there are a couple of new features that are worth talking about. And I think the first one is the Grand Underground, which is kind of an expansion on a feature we did have in the original, which was you could go underground and you could mine for items and make secret bases. But they've made that a lot more in this one. To start with, it's almost twice as big, so it's huge now compared to the original size. But they've also added some new things you can do there. You can still do everything you could do in the original, so you can mine for items, you can make secret bases, but you can also find secret Pokemon layers, where you go in, and they're kind of similar to a very small version of the wild area from Sword and Shield, in that you have Pokemon walking around on the overworld with you, and you can battle them by walking into them rather than walking through bushes for random encounters. And this is also where you can find...
But not quite an open world thing.
Yeah, not quite an open world. It's just kind of like one screen like that. And they have different environments, and there are some unique Pokemon you can find here that you can't find anywhere else in the game. So if you're a completionist, you definitely have to check this out.
Gotcha.
But you can also find some items down there. So this is where you can kind of get, if you used your powerful TM and you need another copy of it, you can find a lot of them down here. So that was
nice.
That was nice. The TMs weren't reusable. This was a good way to get more.
So while it's not necessary, it's still a good place to kind of get into?
Yeah, it's very unnecessary in that I almost didn't spend much time in it because you never have to for the main story. And there's not much that compels you to. But I actually do recommend checking it out. It's pretty cool. I like the new stuff they added. Even though the game doesn't really tell you to go do it, it's cool. You should spend a little time down there.
And is it more end-game gameplay down there too? Is it a greater challenge to fight the Pokemon down there? Are there different trainers or anything we've seen a battle tower or stuff like that?
Yeah, so it's not really end-game content, but the Pokemon in the layers do scale with you a little bit. If you can go down there right when you get access, your Pokemon will be in the 15 to 20 range, and the Pokemon you find down there will be in the 15 to 20 range. But then if you go down there at the end of the game, then they'll be in the 50 to 60 range. So it's not like a battle tower where there's challenge to be had here, really. But it is nice in that you can go down at any point in the game and catch Pokemon that can immediately contribute to your team.
Nice. And speaking of catching Pokemon, with the new content versus the old, have they expanded the decks? Is it national decks, or is it still just the decks from the originals?
It's the original decks. I would say the only real difference here is there's a few Pokemon that you couldn't have caught in the original that you can catch now. That would have been in the decks, but you would have had to trade for or transfer. there are some more that you can just catch now, either in the underground layers, or there's a few NPCs that hand out some new Pokemon. But like most of the main routes, the Safari Zone, etc., that all has basically the same Pokemon from the original.
Cool. And so what else? What's old is new and new is old here?
Yeah, so one thing that they updated a bit that I enjoyed much more in this version than the original were the Pokemon contests, where in the original, they were like this kind of follow the leader Simon Says type minigame. And they were okay. I enjoyed them. But I like it better in this one. Because...
Oh, yeah. So they changed it.
A little bit. So they changed the minigame where it's kind of this rhythm game where it's like you tap the button to the, a little thing sliding across your screen. Kind of like a very basic Guitar Hero. But the thing that I like about it is actually mostly the presentation. In the original DS games, when you're doing the Pokemon contest, you're basically just watching 2D sprites kind of bump around a little bit. Whereas in this one, you get to watch your 3D Pokemon dancing around on the stage, which was a lot more compelling for me. And a reason I spent more time doing it in this version than the original.
I guess it makes up for the lack of shenaniganry had at like Pokemon campsites.
Yeah, it's definitely a nice replacement for that, because that was one of the things. I actually spent a decent amount of time in the camp in Sword and Shield just because I liked seeing like the 3D models move around and interact, and this definitely filled that need for me.
And most importantly, though, can you like get Dialga in there and like put him in a top hat?
You can get Dialga in there. You can't put him in a top hat. There's a few customizations.
What's even the point?
I know, and that is something that was in the original, so that was actually a disappointing omission. But I get that.
I was like ready to buy, but now.
But yeah, there's a little customization you can do. When you send your Pokemon out, you can put little stickers on the Pokeball, and it makes like a little visual effect when it comes out. Like you can put a fire sticker, and then when the ball opens, there will be a little puff of fire. So that's kind of neat. And there are.
I was really hoping you were going to say you put stickers on the Pokemon. As
I wish.
Sponsored.
But there are outfits for the trainer, so there's a little bit of customization there. Not quite as much as like in Sword and Shield, where you had like the different clothing pieces that you could mix and match. In this one, it's just kind of, there's like 10 outfit options to choose from, but it's still nice. I wore like a Pikachu hoodie most of the time, and I appreciated that I could change it.
There you go. So yeah, some changes worthwhile knowing. And I guess one change possibly that could be worth knowing about too is, did they do any adjustments to the localization or the story? Is it more embellished, or is it still the same from what it was?
It's still basically, a background element compared to kind of the more recent Pokemon entries, where in the more recent ones you get a lot more cutscenes, more kind of scripted moments, and that's not really the case in this game. There's the occasional kind of scripted scene, but for the most part, the story is more of a backdrop, and the focus is on you kind of exploring and adventuring on your own. And this does kind of tie into how the routes are set up compared to more recent Pokemon games, where kind of Sword and Shield have these fairly linear routes outside of the wild area.
Yeah.
There's a lot more branching paths in the Diamond and Pearl remakes, because that's just how it was in the original.
Which makes sense, since that's all they had, I guess.
Yeah, so it just gives this different feel where there's just this higher focus on exploration, and which is nice. It makes the game, it makes me as a player feel a little more independent. There's a little less hand-holding compared to the more recent games, which, can be hit or miss depending on what you want out of your game, but I liked it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It all depends on what you're after in your experience. Well, we've had two pretty big umbrella kind of subjects here. What's our third thing that people need to know about before they get into these games?
Well, there is one more thing I wanted to touch on before we move to the third thing.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, no worries. Which is that in the original game, this is something they expanded on. You could have your Pokemon out, and there were 11 Pokemon that you could have out and following you around in Amity Square. but they
And that was
expanded
just
on
in
that.
Amity Square, right?
Just there. You could have just those 11 Pokemon and just in that location. But in this
I imagine there's a license where, like, what you're allowed.
Yeah, I think it was the starters and then Tubor, and I can't remember what the Tubor were. I bet one of them was Pikachu.
Still funny.
But in this one, they've expanded on that a lot. You still unlock the feature
Nice.
in the same place, but once you have unlocked the ability to have a Pokemon out and following you, you can do it with any Pokemon anywhere, which is great. It's a little awkward in 3D versus 2D because your Pokemon moves a bit slower than you if you're running or biking, so they have to keep like hopping to the Pokeball and then they hop back out behind you. But it's worth it to have your Pokemon following you around. It's just such a cute novelty. Some of them are definitely...
And
yeah. So some of them are better than others. It's because everything has to get scaled down.
Yeah, did you recent Ekans
yes.
animation or whatever?
Yeah, Ekans just moves around like a Roku. Just sliding around. And some of the bigger Pokemon also get scaled down in a way that sometimes looks okay and sometimes makes them look a little goofy. So, there's like some clunkiness to this feature, but it's definitely overall much more
better to have it than not.
Yeah, especially because ultimately if you think your Pokemon looks a little funny, well, you just pick a different one,
Yeah, that's fair. Deal with it. But yeah, I would have been remiss to like glaze over that. That is an important feature to know about. And that some Pokemon are better than others at following you around.
Yeah, for sure.
Who's your Pokemon of choice before we move on?
I had my Skuntank following me for most of the game.
That would keep people away from you.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Skuntank is underrated. I feel like it's not that popular, but I love him.
I remember them being pretty VA back when I played with them. But yeah, it's not one of those like top tier ones you hear about a lot.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I just like smelly Pokemon because I'm big on Garbodor too, and I feel like people don't like him either.
I was gonna say you just got like Trubbish, Garbodor, Weezing, Skuntank. There's a theme here. But at any rate, yeah, what's your last tip before people get into this game and before we wrap this video up?
Yeah, so the last one is the most tip-like of the three, which is you definitely want to make sure, I think more so than in recent Pokemon games, that you talk to all of the NPCs that you can find.
They actually have meaningful things to say now?
Yeah, well, sometimes they have meaningful things to say, and they have meaningful things to give you, is the big thing. They have the normal thing that you expect in Pokemon games. Some of them give you TMs, some of them offer trades, but there's an extra reason in this one that isn't really present in other Pokemon games, which is that early on in the game, you get access to basically a smartphone called a Pokétech, and you can add...
Is it also a Rotom?
No, not in this one. I guess that started in Sun and Moon, right? Where it's a Rotom?
No. Yeah.
Yeah. But in this one, it's just a smartphone. And it has apps that you can install on it, which are basically just kind of extra modes for it. And some of them are just kind of funny but useless. Like there's one that's just a coin flipping app. And some of them are more useful. Like there's a friendship tracker that shows you how much your Pokemon like you, and there's one that helps you find hidden items. And you're going to want to talk to all of the NPCs you can find, because a lot of these apps come from just random NPCs that give them to you.
Yeah, that's pretty crucial.
And then the other thing that I think has changed more in the modern Pokemon games is like every fishing rod is missable in this game if you just don't talk to the people that give them to you. So there's a lot more missables, and if you don't talk to NPCs, you'll miss a lot more of them. Even some of the items that NPCs don't give you, like for every HM, before you can use it on the map, you still have to find the TM copy of it. And I don't want to say they're missable, because some of them are like you can't continue the game until you find it. But they don't just give them to you. Some of them are off the beaten path and you have to go find them. And if you ever get stuck looking for them, there's almost always a couple NPCs that will either point you in the right direction or just tell you where it is. So definitely there's some valuable information they can give you. more so than in other Pokemon games.
Nice.
And then one other last thing on this topic is that if you have Sword and Shield data and Let's Go data on your Switch, you're definitely going to want to talk to every NPC in Floroma Town, because they have a little surprise for you that I'm not going to spoil, but it's definitely worth getting, so you should talk to all the NPCs there.
There we go. Well, that's a pretty valid thing to point out to people, because it's so easy to get into the routine with the Pokemon games that, like, a lot of the text is just, whatever, and you might come across the odd person that's like, I'll trade a Pokemon with you, or I'm the person that renames them, but, like, knowing that there's missable items out there, that's good to know.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more.
I guess that about does it.
Yeah, I think that's about it.
Is there anything else do you think folks need to know, Brian? Or
no, I mean, I think ultimately like I said, it's a very faithful remake, so if you played the original, you'll feel right at home, and it's not that complicated a game, so if you're new, I think you'll have a fine time with it, so just, enjoy.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for coming on to talk to me, and as always, folks, get on over to RPGFan.com if you want to check out Brian's full review. That's gone live now. And otherwise, you can check out features, our Twitch channel. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can find us a whole bunch of places. RPGFan.com is the site. And thank you so much for watching this video for myself and from Brian.